Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. Hopefully, everybody's doing great and had an amazing weekend. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for watching our video and being here with us. Thank you, Kara. Thank you, Rina, for being here with us. We have an amazing topic today. We're going to be talking about neuroplasticity, brought to you by Kara Jean Wilson, or High Performance Coach. And also, please do not forget the 30th of this month. Do not miss out. We have a session with Irina Pornova. She's having her, she's conducting a seminar on manifestation coaching. So please do not miss out. So I look forward hearing from those events soon. Now, Kara, tell us a little bit about neuroplasticity.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. So neuroplasticity. Okay, so first we're going to science a whole bunch, and then we'll get into the why the heck this matters to any of us in the first place, because we're not neuroscientists, right? So neuroplasticity in the science world is defined as the ability of the nervous system to change its activity in response to those intrinsic and extrinsic stimuli by reorganizing its structure, functions, and connections after, say, an injury or a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, which is great unless you've never had a stroke, a traumatic brain injury, or any of those things. Fun fact, your brain still adapts to all stimuli. And that's where it starts to apply to groups like us. So our brain is designed to change and adapt anytime something new happens. It completely reorganizes its structure, functions, and connections if it needs to. This is neurogenesis, which we're not going into today, but it's sort of a caveat of this. So our brains are designed to change. They're dynamic, mushy geniuses. Now, like many mushy geniuses, it is very easy for our brains to fall back into the pathways that it knows and understands, right? Like go the way, it's like, this is the same old, so I'll just go down the same old. So when you're doing the same old, nothing really has to change in your brain. But every time you are injured, every time you are stressed, every time you try something new, every time your brain has to be like, what is this? It dynamically adapts to adjust to that, which means the more you put something new and unusual in front of your brain, the faster it is able to adapt. It can literally create new neurons and new pathways and new connections to ideas that you decide are what you really want. It's all kind of part of epigenetics. So, as we think about the mush management and neuroplastic genius in our brain, what immediately comes up for you, Irina?
Oh my gosh, as you were talking, I was building the associations. Like you said, like once our brain got information of something new, something not experienced, I just, like got association of the kid. It's the same, like, you take them the first time to the kindergarten and they are like literally departed from their, family, from mommy, right? And all of a sudden they're like, what is this? Where am I? How am I gonna cope? Do I know these people? Like unfamiliar, place, unfamiliar faces. Like, how do I deal with that? And it's funny enough, right? A couple of days, maybe crying, maybe adjusting, but they feel fine afterwards. This is exactly what brought me to this, imagination.
Yes, that's it exactly. What about you, Johnny? What came up for you?
For me, I was thinking about, I was working this weekend with a client who's dyslexic. And she was telling me how things feel when it connects with her brain and how things tingle in the back of her head. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And now with your explanations, just like sinks in.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So that stuff. Okay. So so now we know how the brain works, and you've like even tracked it to kids, to clients, right? So if you know that the more unusual, the more uncomfortable, the more unfamiliar things you allow into your brain, the better it gets to be at its neuroplastic genius self, what would you start to do?
What would I start to do?
I think I would start to take more challenges. Like knowing, I already know that I could adapt pretty well, but now having this information, it makes me even more comfortable to experiment with my life and to get myself in the situations that are not very comfortable for me, maybe not unfavorable, but I know that the outcome is going to exceed any expectations, whatever my brain can accept or understand at this point.
Yeah, well, I was going for something similar. I was gonna say I was gonna play with my senses because now my brain is better connected. I should be able to feel more, do more. But I never thought about, yeah, Irina, you brought the perfect word, challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also another thing that came up for me, Kara, was fear. To deal with fear in the most fun way, right? Don't let that F stop my other F, right? Don't allow fear
Yes.
to stop my fun, because I am gonna have lots of fun.
Good, we're
Oh, I
keeping
am
it PG.
so stealing that.
You just download it. This is our connection
Yes.
with the source. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, that is it exactly. It's like you have a little god in your brain. This neuroplasticity of your frontal cortex. It's like, oh, things are different here, and it just changes and it adapts and it does something different every time. And the more you do that, the more you start to see the way it wants to do that, and you can literally start controlling the change in your brain. So, I was talking earlier with Johnny about one of the things that I teach classes on it, and I still struggle with it. And it's all about having that grace for myself, right? Like, so somebody else, life happens and they accomplish something differently, or they don't accomplish something, or, they adapt to the fact that life happened. I'm like, yeah, man, life, am I right? Come on. But when it's my turn, I'm like, why didn't you do that? You should have done that. You know better. Your brain can adapt. It's neuroplastic. How come you didn't make it do that? And I beat myself up. So I actually use neuroplasticity and that spongy yo-yo-ness anytime I want to accomplish anything now. So here's the fun game, okay? Here, and you can play it with yourselves, you can play it with your clients. Hi, Forever Happy too. We're so glad you're here. Play this with everyone you know. This is one of the greatest games, okay? And it literally, it's like choosing challenge for your brain, but in the funnest kind of way. So I want you to think back to, let's just do a week ago. Think about last Monday. What was going on last Monday, right? Kind of just sit there for a second and remember what had happened is of Monday. Now leap forward and imagine next Monday. And what that's going to look like. And what are the balances? What'll be the same? What'll be different? How much extra space would we have? Cool, now go back 2 months. What were you doing 2 months ago? So that would have been March. Back on a Monday in March, what were you up to? Who are you hanging out with? What were you eating regularly? Okay, now jump forward 2 months. July, it's now July. It's a Monday, and what would you be doing? Who would you be hanging out with? What could you be doing? 2 whole months. 6 months. Go back 6 months. What's it? 1, 2, 3, 4. November. It's now winter time. Again, I had to count it on the calendar.
That works.
It's November. right? And it's a Monday, and you're hanging out. Who are you hanging out with this weekend? What were you doing? What? Okay, now go ahead 6 months. Where will you be? What could you be doing? And you can do that to make 1 year goals, 1 week goals, 10-year, 20-year goals. If you've been on the earth, I've been on here for 40 years. I can go backwards. Okay, probably like 35 years. The first 5 are a little shady. But you can yo-yo your brain and force. So what that does is it forces your brain to walk all the pathways and change and adapt to whatever's coming. And then you leave this place of question in the advance, 6 months from now, 10 months from now, a year from now, 10 years from now. And knowing your brain goes backwards to 10 years. And all of the things that you have learned and accomplished and the challenges you overcame and the struggles that you went through and the joys that you had and the people that you met. Imagine 10 years from now, but with that knowledge. Anything you do that's new, just like anything you did that's new, but you're doing it with all of that behind you to support you, to engage with. What came up for you in this? We'll go with Johnny first this time.
With me at the beginning, when you started with a whole 2 weeks, 2 months, I can hardly remember what I had for breakfast. That's a reality. But then truly when you started fast forwarding onto the goal setting and everything, it really made sense for me because it really even lines up with what Irina does, the power of manifestation. Putting those mental pictures and images together for us to achieve the goals. One thing that is really, really, really powerful, at least to me, in my experience, is when you mention the people that you see yourself surrounded with. For me, I've always looked for meeting interesting people, but people that can help me with knowledge. Along my path, I'm always meeting fantastic people. So, like the two of you. So you're part of that manifestation as it comes along. That's what's for me.
You know what? For me, that's interesting. I could recall what happened 2 weeks from today on Monday because we had our podcast. What's going to happen 2 weeks after? It's going to be our podcast.
That is true.
Something that's going to stay there and it's easy to relate to, but it's very good. Like start exercising our brains to answer the questions that we never asked before, right? So this way we develop new neuropaths. And another thing that came up for me, I know this great exercise that I don't do, but it's also good for your memory as well as for brain pathways.
Mm-hmm.
Just try it. Okay, you go about your day, the whole day. Then you go to the bed, and before you fall asleep, try to go backwards, not remembering everything from the morning till the point you're in the bed, but backwards. Okay, I'm in the bed now. What have I done just a minute before? What have I done an hour ago? And it's such a great practice also for all these skills.
That is genius thing to do. You and the yo-yo game fits with that. You can actually do that to plan your day the next day. So go ahead and reverse your whole day, right? Like run through, and it's harder than you think. You're laying down to go to bed, and you're like, okay,
much harder.
I put on my pajamas, and I brushed my teeth, and we ate a thing. I'm sure we did. Oh yeah, we had, and it will take you a second to remember just something 2 hours ago, right?
Oh, true.
But you're it's sort of like choosing to take those things from short term, like that just happened and your brain adapts, and saying, hey brain, let's remember this though. Let's use this to our best advantage. And the more you do this behavior, this backwards and forwards specifically, it forces your brain into that neurodynamic, neuroplastic change so that you're, just like Irina said, it's a muscle you're working. You're building that muscle in your brain stronger and stronger and stronger. So here's another fun fact to go with all of this brain knowledge. The way that we think actualizes in different ways. So this is to tie into what Irina does with the manifestation, right? In a practical world, like I live in the leadership development, it's all about what are you going to do and how are you going to track it and how are you going to celebrate it when it's done and how are you going to learn from it? You know, it's all very practical. But manifestation is a whole lot of, I think of it as that space when you take a breath, where you pause right before you exhale, right? Like that's the manifestation space. You inhale and you're doing a thing. But you hesitate for just a second at the top of that breath before you do a thing again. And that hesitation spot, so that's that manifestation magic zone, right? And in that, with this neuroplastic brain of ours, there are specific things you can insert into that depending on what it is that you want to work on. So let's say you are struggling with feelings of not enough. This is a very common one for, all humans on the planet. I don't think I have ever met anyone ever who hasn't run into this problem. Maybe I just haven't met a big enough narcissist, but I've met quite a few people who struggle with it, okay? So, all of us who have gone through this, somehow I'm not enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not fast enough, I'm not skilled enough, and you struggle with these feelings of self-doubt and this self-worth. If it is truly a feeling, images are going to pop up in your brain. They're the way that your brain says, oh yeah, we know this is factual because, right? So in a manifestation, in that hesitant breath, if you're yo-yoing your brain and your brain goes to, well, so remember this time where you were a total failure, huh? And you're like, thanks brain, didn't need that right this second. You can change it. That feelings are attached to images. So you can then decide to remember a time where you did feel super confident. What was that time when you walked in the room and people were like, Johnny! And you're like, hey. Or you come onto a Zoom and they're like, Arena's here! And you're like, what's up? Right? And you had that boost of, you can visualize that and literally exchange image for image to change the way you feel. So Elise Myers, I love her. I don't know if anybody on here follows her. But she started doing this thing where she started taking pictures of things that make her happy. Just random. It could be, from an outside point of view, it's a picture of a coffee cup. It's the picture of a random pin. But to her, there are moments that made her happy, that made her smile. They're just captured seconds. And by doing that, she's actually etching happiness into her brain in a physical, real neuroplastic, creating pathways and neurogenesis and new neurons and carving happiness into her brain. If you are thinking that you're not smart enough, like you're using those, well, you know that, and you're using the words to put yourself down, you're not smart, you're not capable, all of those terrible things we say to ourselves that if anybody heard, or if we even said out loud in a mirror, we'd be appalled by, but our brain says to us all day long, yeah, me too, friends, me too. It's a shortened quote, but there's a quote from, oh my God, I just blanked his name, who is the martial artist, who is so all I can think of is the Red Dragon, but that's not, I don't even know if that's a movie that he's in anyway.
Red Dragon. Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee, thank you. Thank you. I had Jackie Chan stuck in my head, and while both of them are amazing, Bruce Lee is doing it. So Bruce Lee has this quote, and I'm gonna do it terribly, but so go find it so you can get the whole thing. It's really good. And essentially it boils down to your words has to spell. That's why it's called spelling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, Kara, that just brings me. Can I just say something before I lost the train of thought? Right, because remember, our words also energy, right? So people have to be mindful what they say, because if they say I am tired, I'm not feeling well, what they are sending out to the universe, that they are tired, that they are not feeling well, and that's exactly what they are getting back. I don't have any money, I don't have good relationship, what they are getting back, that's exactly The word's spelling is the spell that we are sending to the universe. Oh my gosh, brilliant.
I know when I heard it, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, accurate. Done. Taking that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So your words cast a spell inside your head or out. It literally does. It literally creates change, dynamic change in your brain. Like, that's what we're talking. It really, 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 like, it's not just some fun woo-woo manifestation. Don't we feel good? It's like the manifestation is so physically, tangibly, trackably real in
And
this.
let me add to this also before I forget. This part, the first part that I'm going to explain, I read it in a book. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, but it's a book about learning how to meditate. And in the book is created as a story, so it's not like step one, step two is a story. And the guy tells the monk, like, how can you sit still for so long and like be peaceful? How can I sit for less than a second and the fly goes like, and I go, and I'm like, that's me. Squirrel. So the guy is like, well, I'm gonna teach you the flower technique meditation. You grab a flower in your hand, you sit down, you look at the flower, you figure out what are the things that you like, what are the things that you enjoy about the flower. So he goes through a description of only positive things, and then the guy's like, should I start noting what I don't like? Like, and he's like, why? You're saving those memories to yourself. Just keep the positive ones, because the bad ones are always going to be around it. They're always going to be there. It's not like you can hide them, but don't focus your mind into it. And then he says, the key to being quiet is just like the smell of the flower. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but there's something magical when it reaches your nose. So that's why it's so important to understand that words are just like the smell of the flower. You cannot see them, you cannot touch them, but it can cause a huge reaction in your head. That is from that book that I wish I could remember the name. But then it comes the part from the Bible. This part you may not know, but I was at one point 6 months away from being ordained as a pastor. And I remember that we were talking with some of the teachers in the university, and they were explaining that, we all have bad thoughts. We all do. And we cannot suppress them. Our brain is gonna shoot them out. But it's really important for you, when you have those thoughts, to do not say them out loud. Why? Because the second you broadcast from your mouth, that's when they start becoming reality. They start synthesizing in the universe. And I'm like, did I just hear that from a pastor? He's like, yes, you just heard that from a pastor.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And when you add neuroplasticity into that, it makes sense. You're literally saying, brain, this is what I want. It doesn't know. It's like, oh, okay, that seems sure. Let's go down that path. Yes. Oh my God, I loved every second of this. Okay, so if I was going to tie a pretty bow on this discussion for us today, what would my pretty bow be? Our brains are neuroplastic geniuses that want to adapt and change. It thrives. It's how you work the muscle out. So choosing what you adapt and how you change is up to you. And you can continue having the images of your failure go through your brain and thinking the terrible words of yourself, or you can replace that picture of your failure with your favorite pen, or you can change the language with which you speak and cast a completely different spell. And not just in a woo-woo, I mean, absolutely in a woo-woo. Y'all know I love some woo-woo. But in a real physical, scientific, trackable, creating pathways in your brain kind of way. We've seen it here. We talked about it in how we recognize when kids go to school. We talked about where we see it not just in a book about meditation, but also in discussion around church. I mean, it's really true. So that's where I'll leave the pretty bow. I knew if I started talking that it would come to me. Now you all know a little bit inside my brain. So if you go to a lecture, a webinar, listen to a YouTube, thanks for hanging out, guys. You will retain somewhere around 10% of what you experience, right? If you're part of a discussion, if it goes into a discussion so you get multiple different types of brains giving you their spell, you'll retain upwards of 70%. But if you do what Johnny just did and go share a piece of that information, right? So he's been working on this meditation book and he shared some of it with us. He's going to retain that upwards of 90% because he just forced his neuroplastic brain not just to read it, not just to experience it, but to share it. And he created a 3-lane highway in his brain with it so it sticks better. So knowing that, what would you go out and share? Irina, we'll start with you this time.
What I would go out and share, just saying that it's awesome that we have that beautiful gift, right? That we hardly use. And it's great that we know about it, that we are aware about it, because a lot of people are not aware about it, right? They're just stuck in the 3D reality. So once we have this knowledge, it makes our life more meaningful, more powerful, because we know that we can create anything we desire in our life. Everything is possible, right? Let's just, decide what we want and then just go after it, because our brain is going to adapt. We are going to create all these new neural paths, and that's the beauty of it. And we are going to have everything what we desire.
All right, follow that, Johnny.
That's a hard. She set the bar really hard. Hi. But in reality, I have a view of life that we are spiritual beings living physical reality, and that we all come here for one purpose only: to be happy. And we forget that hell and heaven we created here. So along that path, I would use that to teach more people to be happy.
Yes. And mine's epigenetics.
Share the secret of neuroplasticity with people.
Please go tell someone you care about this today. Yes, everybody listening. Also, I'd love to hear what your one thing would be. If you, now that you know that simply by speaking your spell out and sharing those things, you're affecting other people's neuroplasticity. What spells would you cast? Love to see it in the comments. Please and thank you. Yes. And that's this is why I talk about like if you guys have been following for a while, epigenetics comes out of my mouth like Tourette's. Something comes up, I'm like, epigenetics. It's because of this. Because of the neuroplasticity of our brains, because of our brain's ability to adapt to things that happen to it. Everything that happens inside your brain is a chemical and electrical signal. Those chemical and electrical signals can actually act like light switches and flip on and off different parts of your actual DNA. So we come in with so much DNA that a lot of it's not on. So you can actually turn on your lucky DNA, your happiness DNA, your joy DNA by choosing it. The same way that we see with depression and anxiety. Yo, me, since I was 8, anxiety and depression, I collect them both, baby. Yes. But I have been rewriting my brain so that happens less. Okay, so this is kind of a deep personal share. I have had so in anytime you go into therapy or into the therapeutic world, we talk baselines. We don't talk about normal or abnormal, right? There is no neurotypical and neurodivergent. That's a thing for mostly society and our brains. so we can understand ourselves. As far as health goes, it's a baseline. My baseline is different than everybody else's. It's what works for me, right? So my baseline, most of my life, has been 5 anxiety attacks a day. Every
Wow.
day. Since I was 8. About 3 years ago, I was in therapy, and they were like, there are people who've never had an anxiety attack. And I was like, that can't. How do you know that you're like doing things in life if you don't have anxiety? I honestly thought that was the craziest thing I had ever heard, but it cast a spell. Those words sat with me, and I was like, is this really, like, what would that life look like if you didn't have those? What would your energy be like at the end of the day if you didn't deplete it like 5 times through the day where you're like, oh shit, I need another coffee? What would that be like? And so I started to research. Then I got into cognitive behavioral therapy. Then I started learning about neuroplasticity, epigenetics. You guys, as of today, I am today years old, and I have one anxiety attack every other week now.
Okay, that's awesome.
So in a practical, real, therapeutic kind of way, you can literally change your brain for what you want. So what do you want? And that's the question I would leave you with. What do you want? Because your choice matters.
Mm-hmm.
Mic drop.
There we go.
Beautiful.
So with that mic drop, that is some question that you really have to answer to yourself. And I love your story, Kara, because like I said, just this weekend is the first time that I work with somebody that is dyslexic. I've never worked with somebody with any type of challenge or disability, and it was like, okay, I gotta, as a teacher, I gotta figure out how to work with her in a way that clicks. I was lucky enough that she was opening to explaining how things work, and I can just, work my magic around it. And she was like, oh my God, it's the first time that I dance. It's the first time that I'm able to keep tempo. It's the first time, and it's the first time that somebody's patient enough to try to understand my brain before they understand that I cannot do it. And I was telling her, just like you said, everybody can change their brain. Everybody can. We all need just that little extra help, that little extra push. So thank you for sharing that.
Better with a buddy. That's why this group is here. Hey.
Yay! All
Yeah,
right.
that's so beautiful. And like Kara said, it's better for us start really focusing on what we want rather than what we don't want, because our brain is functioning this way. We always think about the things that we don't want. And let's use neuroplasticity to bring into the reality exactly what we want to have in our life.
Yep.
And so it is.
There we go. So
Like 3 mic
next
drops
week,
this call.
next week we're gonna have Irina with let's see, choose love over fear. So we have a great topic for next Monday. Remember, choose love over fear. Please, we're not saying Tinder or Bumble. We're saying love over fear. 2 different topics. So
Yay.
till next Monday, thank you very much. See you all. Bye.